There's nothing quite like getting that shiny new outboard engine out of the box and bolting it onto your boat for the first time. About the last thing you'd ever want to do to it is this. Now, of course, you wouldn't do it on purpose unless you were a complete idiot, but it does happen. They're getting put on the backs of boats, they get dropped in the water, they're not secured correctly, or in a worst case scenario, a capsize in a boat. What happens if your beautiful Yamaha goes into salt water like this? You might think that the first thing you want to do is get it straight out of there. Well, that might not actually be the case. Unless you can get it to someone to work on it straight away, just work out a strategy first, because the damage is really going to start happening when that motor comes out of the water and is exposed to air while it's wet, particularly if it's in salt water. That's when the corrosion starts, and corrosion starts fast. But luckily I'm only about 5 minutes from terrace boating here in Raymond Terrace, and I know my old mate Dan Power is there waiting for me. I'm going to pull this motor out of the water right now, and as you can see, it's full of salt water. If I pop the cowling open, look at that, there's probably a brim or two in there. I'll just get that water out so that I can carry it. I'll get it straight up to the car and straight to the boys. So Dan, as soon as I got this drowned motor here, you put it straight into this freshwater test tank, and we've left it in there for a minute or so and then pulled it out. What's the next step?
Yeah, well Steve, we've got all the salt off the engine now. Getting it to us immediately was very important. There's probably a few extra steps that, that the customer could do as well, as after it being in the fresh water, he could get the water out of the cylinders and put some oil in there if he was capable of being able to remove spark plugs and things himself as well. So I might take you through a few of those steps, something you might be able to do in the future if that was to ever happen.
If you're out in the field and it's going to take more than 5 minutes to get back there, you might want to do that in the field before you come in, eh?
Yeah.
All right, run us through that.
Okay.
Removing the spark plugs from an outboard motor is a very straightforward process involving the minimum of tools, and this simple step provides access to the cylinders and pistons.
Okay, so now that we've got the spark plugs out, we've got a direct orifice into the inside of the engine. We should be able to tip that engine up and tip a large proportion of the water out of the cylinders, and we can wind it over slowly, and any water that's in the crankcase will come out as well.
A little bit of water came out of there, Dan?
Yeah, there's a little bit there. And what that'll do is it'll enable more water to come out. See the water?
See it pumping water out. Yep. There it goes.
Okay, now that we've got the water out of there, we need to get some oil in on there so that it's not going to rust.
Okay.
Some lubrication.
Because the air's now getting to those metal surfaces which have still got a residue of water on them, so we need to stop it.
Yep. So now it's a critical time.
Okay. Just to recap so far, begin by completely immersing the drowned motor in clean fresh water. Lift it out, drain, and remove the spark plugs. Tilt and continue to drain the motor while slowly turning the flywheel.
Okay, good tip is to use the Yamalube 2-stroke oil. Put some 2-stroke oil into an oil can. It's going to make it a little bit cleaner and easier to put it into the cylinder. A few squirts of oil in there.
Again, you're just turning it over slowly, turning the flywheel with your hand?
Yeah, that's right.
And already that oil would have gone through and coated most of those metallic surfaces inside the cylinders?
Yeah, that'll be coating the piston, the piston rings and the cylinder bore, which are very critical parts. There is one other part which is also very important, and that's the crankshaft. And that's within the crankcase itself, so it's going to be a little more difficult to get all the water out of there. And the best chance of saving that is going to be when we actually get it running. I'll just put a bit more oil in there. You really can't put too much oil in, it'll be just messy, that's the end of it.
It's starting to squirt out there now. So next, pour oil into the cylinders while gently turning the flywheel, then head straight to your nearest Yamaha dealer. Well, the patient's in expert hands now and the prognosis looks good. I'll get out of the way.
Okay, so the boys at Terrace can get this thing going for us now. They'll be doing other more technical work, such as draining the water out of the carburetor and getting some fresh fuel into the fuel system, cleaning up wiring connections and making sure the long-term durability of the connections is going to be good, and optimally getting the engine running so we can get some temperature into this engine. Any small residue of water that remains in the crankshaft bearings can be evaporated.
The message is that the worst of the damage will occur after you pull the motor out of the water, but that there are a few simple steps you can take to reduce this damage before getting the motor to an authorised dealer as soon as you possibly can. Put the cowling back on. It was pretty amazing to watch, about half an hour's work, and the guys have got this motor to the point where it starts first pull, runs beautifully, just like a new motor, which is exactly what it is. Now that was fairly easy to do with a portable motor like this one. With a larger, more complex motor with a lot of electronics, there might be a lot more work involved. But hopefully we've shown you that if it goes in the drink, it's not necessarily the end of your outboard. If you do the right things immediately after that happens and you get it to the people with the know-how, there's a very good chance that that drowned outboard will have a second life.